back. It's Thanksgiving week, so we still have our Thanksgiving decorations out. I'm Beth Allers. This is the Beth Show Ever, Homeschool Edition. Today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about myself, share with you some of my journey. It's been 30 plus years since I've been married, raising kids, teaching, and creating a family culture. So let's see, we started back I got married in 1990. I was already teaching at the time that I married. I have a master's degree from UCLA in teaching English, and my bachelor's degree is in linguistics. So the bachelor's degree is in linguistics, the master's degree is in teaching English, specifically teaching English as a foreign language. And that was a really great training for homeschooling, because when you're teaching adults, particularly adults, how to speak another language, and in this case English, there's a lot of methodology that really works with children. If you're teaching children language, it's very natural. They pick it up naturally, right? But learning a language as an adult is more effective if you incorporate many learning styles. So auditory learning, visual learning, kinesthetic learning with movement, music, pictures, games, and all kinds of variety. You learn language more effectively that way, because language is so integrated with the rest of life that speak really well, you don't want to have to think about what you're saying. You just want to express your ideas, right? And so that's the way we teach children in content areas. We teach them with a variety of activities, because if you just sit with one book with no pictures and you read, what happens to the child? Their attention is gone until there's something engaging. Oh, we're going to get to this later. Living books, remember that, living books. Okay, so not textbooks, not dry information, but books that come alive. Those things we remember. Okay, now getting back to me and linguistics. So linguistics was a really fun study for me. I love language, and I love learning. It's sort of like a puzzle. I like puzzles, putting things together. So you get little bits of this and that, and you put the meaning together. And then teaching others how to speak English, read English, write English, and what are the other things? Well, read, write, speak, spell, those things. So my training in teaching language to adults was great training for homeschooling, because you're not teaching so much like it's not a lecture. You're not teaching a lecture of content that you just need to retain and memorize and regurgitate. With language, you need to internalize it so that it becomes part of you, and you don't have to think about it anymore. You just use it. And so this is the way we want to teach children. We don't want their learning experience to be so painful and so temporary. I went through 17 years of education, if you count kindergarten through 12th grade, and then 4 years of college and 2 years of graduate school, and then actually I did some more education after that. But it was better. But those 17 years of education, I don't have a lot to show for it except for a piece of paper, which, gets me jobs and stuff like that. But as far as like actually retaining all that information that I read or I heard in lectures, I don't remember that much of it. so one of the things I wanted to do in homeschooling was I wanted to relearn what I had forgotten, because I was a good student. I would study really hard. I would memorize what I needed to learn. I'd perform on the test, and then I had to just forget it so that I could study for the next thing. But it wasn't things that became internalized by using them and by feeling. Sometimes when we have an emotional, there's an emotional element to the learning, we remember it a lot better. So a lot of my stuff from all those 17 years of school was forgotten. But anyway, I did get the education, and the graduate school was the most effective for me because we were actually practicing what we were learning. And every time I taught a lesson, that was reinforcing to me what I was teaching to someone else. And creating lessons, in order to create lessons, I had to go over and over and then express by my own speech what I was saying. So graduate school, I did learn, and it was more practical anyway. It was for the purpose of teaching. So that was great training for me. And when we had our first child, actually before we had our first child, when I first heard about homeschooling was 1985, and I was just starting college, and I came across a seminar at church one day. I don't know why I was at church, but I came by this door and I decided to sit in on the seminar, and it was about homeschooling, and I had never heard of it before, but I thought, wow, I think that would be really a more effective way of learning, and I would really like to do that with my children. And so I was just a freshman at that time, but I had it in my mind that this is a possibility, because before that I had never known that people could keep their children home with them when they were school age. I always wanted to stay home from school, and my mom told me, if you don't go to school, the police are going to come and put me in jail. And so that made me scared, and and my mom really believed that. And so here's another tidbit, that just gratitude for the pioneer homeschoolers in the homeschool movement in the 1980s, who took the courage to stand against I'd say the fake news of the government that it was illegal to homeschool and that we could not do it. This has been what Alliance Defending Freedom calls a generational win. The lawsuits and the process of watching over our legislation to allow us to homeschool and to preserve our homeschooling freedoms and our parental rights is called a generational win, because they started that in the 1980s. And now homeschooling is accepted, and it's becoming so needed, and it's growing in the numbers of how many families are leaving public schools and homeschooling. And so great applause to Alliance Defending Freedom and Homeschool Legal Defense. Thank you so much for the years of persevering and diligence to grow our freedoms into this place where parents know that this is an option. They're not afraid of going to jail. So back to the beginning of when we were homeschooling. So I first thought about it before I was even married. And then when we had our first child, then I decided, okay, now I need to research. I need to really, really figure out what this is. And God made a way. There were people at church that did homeschool, and I got this big fat book, I think by Mary Pride, probably called the Big Book of Homeschooling, and it showed it had in there all these different approaches that you could use in education, and that's how I found Charlotte Mason, the Charlotte Mason method. So I was nursing my first baby hours every day and reading these books and filling my mind with new ideas and the new possibilities. And so I say that I homeschool all my kids from birth, because from the even before birth, because while they're still in the womb, they hear our voice, they feel our emotions, they recognize music, and they're learning. Their spirit is big, and as their brain develops, they're learning all the way from the moment that God gives them life. So I say I homeschool from birth, because from the time that they're in the womb, I'm conscious that they are learning and that they're growing as a whole person. So education is not just like an empty bag or an empty cup and we dump things in there. Education is more like growing it's growing an organic person. So education is an atmosphere, a discipline, and a life. Education is an atmosphere, a discipline, and a life. That's something I talked about last time. And so even from the moment they're conceived and then when they're born, you have an atmosphere and a discipline of schedule and life and routine, and it's a life. They're learning by looking in your eyes. As you're holding them and you look in their eyes and you smile and you speak to them, they're learning language, they're learning human expression, they're learning the give and take and the mutual relationship of human to human and spirit to spirit. And they're learning emotions as they see, oh, mommy's angry, or oh, mommy's joyful. And as you look at them and you show the joy and delight that you have in that child develops the joy part of their brain. The more joy that they receive from other people enjoying them, the more their brain area of joy grows, and the greater their capacity for joy is for the rest of their life. And so that's all what I feel is the growing up of a person. These are people, these are not machines, and they're not computers that you just program. You put some data in and program them. There's some kind of an algorithm or a formula. You put the data in and you get this out. No, that's not how it is with a person. With a person is fed, a person is nurtured, and then the growth happens. And it's not everything that comes in necessarily causes the growth. Some things that come in are just like discarded, not needed, or it's not the appropriate time. And but the person, just like the body, will absorb what the body needs. And so we want to provide for the child a wealth, a bounty, an abundance of nurture for spirit, soul, and body. Spirit, mind, emotions, discipline, discipline meaning like self-control, as well as physical health.
The legal process can be intimidating. You don't know where to start and you're unsure of what to expect. The attorneys and staff at the law offices of Scott Warmoth have been serving the San Gabriel Valley for over 35 years, helping people just like you navigate through the legal process and ensuring you're treated fairly. You can find them at law888.com or call 626-282-6868. That's 626-282-6868.
I bless you. See you next time.